Wonderful. Good evening, and thank you so much for coming. Hello and welcome to the NYU School of Professional Studies. My name is Dean Angie Kamath, and I'm so pleased to be hosting this tonight with our colleagues from the Center for Global Affairs. Before we get started, I just want to share again, thank you so much, His Excellency Yusuf Tuggar, and all of your staff and your team for being here to focus on the future of Nigeria's foreign policy. His Excellency, universities these days, we often are in our own bubble, and we say the hardest job in the world is to be a university president. And I think that the hardest job in the world might actually be to be a Minister of Foreign Affairs. It's a job that is one of the most important and one of the most critical in these very interesting and trying times in our world. And so we send our thoughts and our prayers to all the individuals and families that are impacted by the recent floods, and we appreciate your being here with us to share both the President's strategy as well as sharing your journey as a student as well in your career. And so we have a lot of students here, so I'm suspecting there's a few folks here wondering, how do I become a Minister of Foreign Affairs? So perhaps you will leave with some more wisdom in that regard. And I really, as I think about the skill set involved in being an effective foreign minister, it surely covers an impressive array of areas from strategy to problem solving, leadership, diplomacy, negotiation, communication, crisis management, all of it. I'm sure through your job training, you have earned multiple graduate degrees in effect. But really, we look forward to learning more about how you continue to learn in your role, how you continue to grow, and really appreciate your generosity of time and spirit to be here with us on your 11-day journey in the U.S. as part of UN General Assembly Week. So thank you. I now invite Dr. Carolyn Kissane here to introduce our speaker and our guest and to move forward with the presentation. Thank you.
And thank you so much. We are so delighted and honored to have the opportunity to welcome and to host His Excellency Ambassador Yusuf Tuggar, who is Nigeria's Foreign Minister, Minister of Foreign Affairs. We also welcome a delegation from Nigeria. We're also very happy that you're here a few days before the official start of UNGA Week. So as Dean Kamath pointed out, that we were able to get in here without too much traffic, which I can't say next week will be the case. We're also honored that you're coming to NYU, to the School of Professional Studies, after spending the morning at the Council on Foreign Relations. So thank you. So before I introduce the topic of the panel, I do want to give a little bit more background, because you do have such an impressive background and experiences. So in addition to now being the Minister of Foreign Affairs, you have a history as a distinguished Nigerian diplomat and politician. And while you're currently serving as the Ministry of Foreign Affairs under President Olajumoke, you also have a very, as Dean Kamath pointed out, a very impressive academic background, holding a bachelor's degree in international relations from the United States International University, as well as master's degrees from the University of Bath and the University of Cambridge. And from 2017 to 2023, you served as the Nigerian ambassador to Germany, where you successfully strengthened bilateral relations between your two countries. And as Minister of Foreign Affairs, you were spearheading, which is very important for today's conversation, the 4D doctrine, which focuses on demography, development, diaspora, and democracy. 4 key pillars aimed at advancing Nigeria's foreign policy agenda. So to learn more about the 4D focus, we are very thrilled to have one of our own, Dr. Jumo Ayandele. Jumo is a dear and very cherished member of the SPS CGA faculty. She's a visiting assistant professor. She's also a Public Voices Fellow, which we're really delighted that she was just recently awarded. It's a collaboration between the Op-Ed Project and NYU's Office of the Provost and Office of Global Inclusion, Diversity, and Strategic Innovation. In addition to her really extraordinary teaching, her research interests involved around comprehending the dynamic relationship and intersection between African governance, human development, and political stability. She is a distinguished African security scholar, and she maintains collaborative partnerships with international and regional decision makers, as well as governmental institutions, to advance human security initiatives and programs that contributed to a peaceful and secure Africa. And as a member of our faculty at the Center for Global Affairs, she's really bringing a very critical area of study, looking and examining the continent of Africa. Her classes are extraordinarily popular, so we are really honored and thrilled she is with us as a member of the faculty, and delighted that she will be in conversation with His Excellency. So thank you so much for being with us. I'm going to be taking a seat and close to the front row. And I also want to welcome all of you for joining us this afternoon. It's really a very, very special conversation. So thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
His Excellency.
Can you hear me at the back? Perfect. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Center for Global Affairs. We are excited and honored to have you, His Excellency. I also want to acknowledge our special ambassadors and delegates that are here in the building. Okay. And this promises to be a very engaging and lively conversation. His Excellency has said that we don't need to use kid gloves on him with the questions that we're going to ask. So I will be doing that. I'll be asking the very, very hard questions that is at the back of our minds when it comes to the future of Nigeria's foreign policy. So a round of applause for everybody here on the side. Okay. So I want to first start, and we're going to go historically. Because when it comes to Nigeria's foreign policy, Africa has been the center of its objectives. But critics, as well as scholars, have said that the foreign policy is a bit dated. It's about colonialism, Pan-Africanism, and with the challenges that we have today, domestically and internationally, there might be need to rehaul this objective. So, for you, His Excellency, under President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, what is the future of Nigeria's foreign policy?
Thank you very much. Thank you for being here. If it gets a bit, if the punches, because we talked about kid gloves, get a bit too heavy, then I might have to do the rope-a-dope. But see, our foreign policy objectives are enshrined in our constitution. So there are 5, essentially: Nigeria's national interests, then of course the unity and peace of Africa, because of the way we came about as a nation. At a time when there was a struggle against colonial regimes, against racist regimes on the continent. Then, of course, our commitment to peace globally, and our commitment to global treaties that we're signatories to, and then, of course, a just economic world order. So these are essentially the foreign policy objectives. So it's because it's in our constitution, it's not something that we can just wake up and change, and it defines us as a nation. So I personally don't see anything wrong with our foreign policy objectives, but the foreign policy agenda is what we have recalibrated to suit the times, to suit the 21st century. So this is why we have democracy, demography, development, and diaspora. And each one is supposed to help us engage other countries and also navigate the what is increasingly becoming a very precarious multipolar world system. It also helps us, of course, to implement or to work towards achieving the foreign policy objectives that are in our constitution. And then you have the president's domestic agenda, which and foreign policy is always a reflection of the domestic agenda, with the 8 focus areas that are not unlike the SDGs, because the first one is food security. Nigeria is a country of 220 million people, so we're very concerned about food security, fight against poverty. These are all, part of the SDGs. Then you look at access to capital, inclusivity. We talk about fighting corruption. We talk about security needs of the country and so forth. So all of this comes together, I would say. So there's no need to change our foreign policy objective.
For those that are not familiar with Nigeria's foreign agenda, would you mind explaining the 4 Ds in detail?
Sure. So with democracy, when we say democracy, Nigeria is a democratic nation. It's Africa's largest democracy. It's, like I said, a nation of 220 million people. Therefore, for us, democratic ideals, democratic values, because of our diversity also, it's a country that has over 300 different languages. Even though English is our lingua franca, is our official language, we're diverse people. It's a multi-religious country, and therefore the best way for us, and it's worked for us to get along together, to make progress, is by way of consensus. So we are harking back to the very modes of democratic appeal that the world is losing at the moment. The hard work of conversation, the hard work of consensus building, of meeting halfway, because these days it's my way or the highway, and that's it. So that is why democracy is facing a lot of challenges, and this is why we feel that it's the way forward for us, and of course the system of government we have. So with that, we're not trying to impose our own system of government on others, but to identify common ground so that we will be able to engage. Demography, I talked about the size. Nigeria is going to be the 3rd largest country in the world by the year 2050. We're going to be 400 million. So we need to prepare for that. This is why we're engaging with other large demographic nations such as the United States, India, China, and many others. We feel that there are lessons to learn there. And we also feel that collectively we will be able to prepare for the future and address some of the concerns. And of course, going back to democracy, we also want to democratize the global governing bodies. And then we come to development, where we're seeking to revamp the global financial architecture because it's not serving the purpose. Countries such as Nigeria are looking to engage others, not for want of development aid, but for mutual beneficial free trade and free flow of goods, of services, so that all sides would benefit. But that can only happen if we address this nagging issue of risk. You always confront political risk, financial risk. We want to have that discussion, and we want Nigeria to be on the table globally. So we want to be members of the G20. We want a revamp of the United Nations Security Council, so that a country like Nigeria can be part of the UN Security Council with a veto, with veto powers, so that we practice what we preach when we talk about democracy. So development, again, we're talking about growing our economy, we're an oil producer, we're the largest oil producer, we're a gas producer, but we want to diversify, we want to grow our economy through agriculture, through infrastructure, through manufacturing. We have special economic zones with incentives. So it's a way of, so it's our own version of, what's the word I'm looking for? Areas that, focusing on areas that need development that, we would use to attract the foreign investment to such areas so that they can take off. Then we talk about diaspora, of course. Last but by no means the least, Nigeria has a huge diaspora. We feel that members of the diaspora, Nigerian diaspora, are ambassadors. There's a very urgent need to change the way others perceive Nigeria, and members of the diaspora can do that. We want to engage them. We want to project positively through them. And of course, the diaspora contributes hugely to Nigeria's economy, but there's more in it. We can get more bang out of it. If you look at what Philippines is doing with the diaspora, I think of about, 8 million or so contributing. I can't remember, I think maybe as high as 13% or so to their GDP. Nigeria has 15 million, and this is even a conservative estimate, but it only contributes, I think, about 5 or 6%. So there's more we can get out of it, and we can change those negative perceptions of Nigeria. And we're trying to do that also by improving the services, the quality of the services that we are providing for that diaspora through the 109 missions that Nigeria has all over the world.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much for the overview of the 4 Ds. And we're going to now go into some of them, but the questions that I have. You mentioned democracy, and we know what is happening in West Africa with the many coups. Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger have also formed their own alliance. What are we doing with ECOWAS, especially as President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is the head of ECOWAS? How are we trying to ensure regional stability as well as regional cooperation? Might I ask, is Nigeria still a hegemon?
Well, see, Nigeria has always been non-threatening in its posturing because we're a large country surrounded by smaller countries that also happen to be Francophone. So I don't like to use the word hegemon, I'll leave that to you. But we don't see it as a threat. I think maybe because of the effect of social media, there's a tendency for us to have a very short-term approach to a lot of what happens in global politics, because things like this have happened in the past. And not just with ECOWAS, but with other economic communities, with other regional bodies and organizations. So let's not look at it as an end in itself. It is part of the evolution of West Africa. It's part of the evolution of Africa. There will be disputes, which is why I open with this issue of the modes of democratic appeal. The fact that you have a falling out does not mean you can't accommodate each other when you have common interests. We have a common interest in fighting terrorism with Mali, with Burkina Faso, with Niger. We have a common interest also in actualizing the African Continental Free Trade Area because they cannot pack up and leave the neighborhood or leave the continent. And when it comes to the issue of ECOWAS, when it comes to the issue of African Continental Free Trade Area, ECOWAS and the AU are on the same page. And of course, we're all on the same page when it comes to the issue of fighting terrorism. And that is what we continue to engage them with. And of course, 3 days ago, was it 2 days ago, 3 days ago, there was an attack in Mali, a very serious one. And of course, ECOWAS has not stopped offering support to Mali, to Burkina Faso, to Niger, and it will continue to do so. And you have to remember that decades ago, we were also under military rule. So there's an evolution that countries go through. Sometimes there's setbacks, but it does not mean that the condition is permanent, or it does not mean that that is the end of ECOWAS, or indeed that whatever organ that has been created by them overshadows ECOWAS, or it means the demise of ECOWAS.
But what does this mean for Nigeria? What role do you see Nigeria playing in West Africa?
Nigeria continues to play the leadership role. President Tinubu, after he was re-elected as chairman of the ECOWAS, or Authority of Heads of State and Government, made clear his focus areas, and it is, of course, the unity of ECOWAS. It is peace and stability of ECOWAS. It is economic integration. And we continue to work on that, because you see, beyond this issue of the AES states pronouncing that their intention to leave, because it takes a year, there's a process to leave ECOWAS, there's some serious work being done. We are working on the ECOWAS trade liberalization scheme. We are working on trade and transport corridors, strengthening them. And when we strengthen them, it would benefit not just Nigeria, not just the countries that have not said they're leaving ECOWAS, but it also benefits the likes of Niger, the likes of Mali, the likes of Burkina Faso. And to date, we still have the Nigeria-Niger Joint Commission. It exists. Till date, Nigeria is building a railroad from Kano to Maradi in Niger Republic. And the Nigerians have not said, no, we're no longer interested in the railroad. So there are benefits. And when it comes to health issues, when it comes to epidemics and all of that, they continue to look to us for support, to work together. But it is also important for Nigeria to remain militarily strong, because I keep quoting Teddy Roosevelt, you walk, tread softly, but you carry a big stick. And that's what we're looking to do.
Thank you very much for the overview. You had mentioned UN Security Council reform, and UNGA is next week. Africa has been leading this fight to democratize the P5. And you had mentioned veto power. The US, a couple of days ago, has backed this reform by offering to have 2 African seats on the P5, but without veto power. In your own opinion, what should reform look like with the P5?
So look at it, if you will, from the perspective of standpoint epistemology. We've experienced it. We've experienced the negative effects. I don't like going back to colonialism, but we have. We continue to experience also the negative effects of not being in the decision-making rooms. So we know where it hurts, which is why it's important for a country like Nigeria that has been an advocate for the global South, advocate for Africa, to be in the UN Security Council, because we know what is required. And if truly we are going to focus on building consensus, if truly we're going to focus on bridge building on on the interconnectedness or interconnectivity of globalization, then we need to revamp. We need to have 21st century structures that would address 21st century problems, and not Second World War, 20th century global governing bodies. And that's why a country like Nigeria, I've said that it's going to be the third largest country in the world if we're preparing for the future. At the moment, it's the largest country in Africa. It has the largest economy. And of course, Nigeria has always offered support for other African countries, not just African countries, but African, Caribbean, Pacific, Global South countries. We have under my ministry the Technical Aid Corps, which is the equivalent of a Peace Corps. We send out volunteers paid up by Nigeria to African, to Caribbean, to Pacific countries that work as doctors, as engineers, as university lecturers. And we've been doing this since 1987 for free. So when you talk about Nigeria's soft power, it's these sort of things. And that's why when we stand up and say we want to represent others, they don't say no. And like I told you, we're non-threatening. So they know that we're not just going to think about ourselves, we're going to think about all of them collectively. And that's what we continue to do.
So if Nigeria has one seat, who should have the second?
Well, that is why we talk about the Ezulwini consensus, which is preferring a solution where the African Union tables the matter and decides who to put forward to represent. But if we're going to be fair, I feel Nigeria should definitely be one of them, because we've demonstrated our goodwill, we've demonstrated our capacity for leadership, and continue to do so.
For those that don't know what the consensus is about, do you mind educating our audience?
Wow. Now you're putting me on the spot, because I've got my experts on the front line, and they will wince if I get it wrong. But, essentially, the Ezulwini consensus was reached, I believe, in Swaziland, where there was a meeting, and African countries decided to put it forward, put the proposal forward, where, as I said, the African Union would select 2 countries to go into the Security Council to represent the rest of Africa. That Africa demands a minimum of 2 seats. So in a nutshell, but if you want to learn more about it, these fellas in front can give you more. He can.
Thank you very much for that overview, because it's something that I have been discussing in my class with regards to UN Security Council reform, and
so you know more than that's all.
And what that means for the Global South, right? With us being able to address our challenges and also promoting these African solutions to African problems. Okay, now we have to turn to US-Africa relations, because we are in the United States.
Yeah.
And the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act is set to expire in about a year. It has served as a key link between US assistance and bilateral trade. The US, with Nigeria, for instance, is a very, very key partner to us. We export to them, they import to us. But with this set to expire, with the Continental Trade Agreement that we're championing, this reemergence of Pan-Africanism, what should be done about the Growth Initiative and Act? Should it be revised, extended, eliminated? What is Nigeria's stance on this matter?
So Nigeria's stance is that it should be extended, but reviewed to allow for more finished products from Africa to come into the American market. because at the moment we are more or less limited to agricultural products, and they tend to be primary goods, primary produce, if you will, yam and stuff like that. And also it is quite difficult because there are certain criteria, certain hurdles that are difficult to surmount. So there needs to be, I think, more engagement between countries like Nigeria and the US in terms of sometimes it's just down to labeling, packaging, stuff like that, you know. So I think this is the best way to address such issues, but also to include textiles, for instance, because this is where you have a longer value chain, where you have a lot of women that are engaged in that industry, the garment industry, and there's a lot of demand also on the American side. If AGOA would permit it today, we have ready-to-go businesses in Nigeria that can export, if not the finished face caps and T-shirts and footwear, athletic footwear, then something very close to it. You know, if you look at the likes of Rough and Tumble and the quality of what they produce out of Nigeria, but they can't export to the US. So I think we need to get serious about stuff like that, because it is one of the key linkages between the US and Africa. So certainly it needs to be extended. We were on Capitol Hill a few months ago, campaigning for that, pushing for that. But again, sometimes the challenges have to do with congressmen and congresswomen that are protecting some of their constituents, and they feel that that would be a threat to certain industrial producers in their constituencies. But I think this is something that is key, and of course it fits in perfectly with the African Continental Free Trade Area, because it would give Africa collectively access to the US markets. And I think it's a way of, if not matching, then certainly surpassing other countries that are engaging Africa when it comes to value chains, when it comes to interconnectivity. So definitely.
Yeah. So what do you think is Nigeria's greatest export to the world?
People. Quality people. And this is why we're focusing even further on, that's why one of the D's is diaspora. But I talked about the technical aid corps. Migration has been weaponized, sadly. People, and it plays into the populist identity politics that is playing out. Certain countries in the Northern Hemisphere are moving increasingly to the right, far right, and even extremism, if you will. And migrants tend to be pointed out as, you know, the cause of all problems. But as I said earlier today, the father of modern economics, Adam Smith, made it clear that the free movement of people is an integral part of free trade. So it's not just the goods and the services moving, but it's also people that are moving freely. So of course we recognize the fact that no country would want unskilled workers that would be a burden on its social welfare system to be dumped on it. That's not what we're saying. That's not what we're advocating for. But there is a natural demand and supply. We have a youthful population. We, like I said, are going to become 400 million by the year 2050. And there are certain countries that are receding in terms of population. They have aging populations. There will be a demand any which way. So what we're saying is let's have a structured solution to the problem where we can, such countries that can afford it, surely would invest in certain sectors where they have a demand. So if you're looking for doctors, invest in our medical schools, in training them, so that when we train one that will go out to work abroad, we have 3 that will remain in Nigeria and work. And this is what we're trying to actually change the technical aid corps that has been doing wonderful work, that has a sizable database of Nigerian professionals to address such issues. Only 2 weeks ago or so, we had a demand from Jamaica. We had a request for I think it was nurses. So you can see where, you know, this sort of thing can be structured properly. It can be tenured. And also we want Nigerians, when they go out, to go out with dignity, with respect, not to be looked down on, and also not to have sometimes inhumane conditionalities attached to them working abroad. When you tell a doctor that she can go and work abroad, but she's not allowed to take along her 5-year-old kid, I think it's not right, it's not proper, and this is what we're looking to do.
And that's a great way to segue into my next question about some of the perceptions that people have about Nigerians abroad, and what your ministry is doing to change that perspective. If you could enlighten us and the audience.
So, like I said, what we're doing on our part, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, is to improve the quality of the services that we render to Nigerians abroad. So consular services, when we talk about passports, passport renewals, and also for those looking to visit Nigeria, visas. So we are improving on even the reciprocity, because it's not easy getting a Nigerian visa. So we want it to become much easier. It is easier now, I'm happy to say, for the for citizens of the US looking to visit Nigeria. We are also looking to engage more with the professionals, because there are lots of Nigerian professionals, some that are completely disconnected. They are not really involved in with the Nigerian communities that are out there, nor are they engaged or involved with what is going on back home. So we feel that they are a very important mouthpiece for Nigeria. And also we want to address this issue of churning out a lot of negative material on Nigeria, because sometimes it comes from within the diaspora. Some are aggrieved, some left Nigeria many years ago, decades ago, maybe even when Nigeria was under military rule. Nigeria has not been under military rule since 1999. Democracy is well entrenched in Nigeria. We've had 7 successive elections. We have elections every 4 years at different levels. What we have is the same US system with, it's a presidential system with a bicameral legislature. We have states and governors and their legislatures, and local government. So we need to improve on the messaging, on the framing, so that people will understand Nigeria better. And the best way to do that is through the diaspora.
Perfect. This is a great way to open up for questions for the audience. I see a hand at the back. Is there a microphone that we can hear? No, yeah, you can shout and project your voice.
Hi, thanks so much for thanks for taking the time. Today I work at the Africa Center World in Harlem. I had just a quick question about generally your point about setting the country's foreign policy. I understand to a large extent foreign policy and your underpinning philosophy, that's all set by the administration. But I imagine the success of that over time would rely on sort of buying by the people, right? The people have to agree and generally believe in the direction of foreign policy. Wonder if you think there is a change in sort of Nigerians' desire to retain the same sort of role that Nigeria's played in the region over time. We think back to the Liberian civil war, for example, the role that we played a sort of a leading role in as a leading force in getting to peace there. And I wonder if the Nigerians of today have a similar desire, if you think Nigerians today have a similar desire to have that role in the region, and if not that, sort of what you think that has transitioned into.
We can take a couple of questions and then His Excellency can respond.
Thank you. That's a very reassuring exposition on Nigeria's foreign policy. And I am not Nigerian, I'm from Ghana, but I find it reassuring because I belong to the school of thought that believes that when Nigeria gets it right, Africa and the world gets it right. So my question has to do with after Nigeria's foreign policy and after African Continental Free Trade Area. We know Nigeria has a new government, and there have been some changes in foreign policy. How has Nigeria's position changed, or foreign policy position changed in terms of after? Thank you.
One more, and then His Excellency would respond.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for your remarks today. I have a question where you've talked about international organization reform, more specifically the UN Security Council. I would like to ask you if there is any other area of improvement in the international organizations aside from the UN, let's say in the African Union or the IMF, that you think Nigeria would benefit from reform.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, we are at the School of Professional Studies, and I was just saying how pragmatic the approach to learning, to education is here. And when with the first question, when we talk about the 4Ds and whether Nigerians have an appetite for it, I don't think Nigerians even have the comfort for having an appetite or not, because of the stark realities that face us. If you look at the conflict in Sudan, for instance, if Nigeria does not engage, there are some say 5, some say 8 million Nigerians of Sudanese origin. So we're talking about dealing with a serious refugee crisis, because they will head back to Nigeria. Some of them already are heading back to Nigeria. And I believe we have as many as 1 million refugees in Chad, for instance. So they will continue to advance, because historically, when you look at the history of Nigeria, a lot of people think that the largest diaspora that Nigeria has is in the West. No, it's not. In Sudan. So that is why Nigeria needs for Africa to be an integral part of its foreign policy agenda. We need to solve those problems. And even when we don't become as involved as we should, we see the fallout, or even when others trying to solve Africa's problems come in and decide, let's keep Nigeria out of it, let's do it ourselves with others, we see what happens. What we're facing today in terms of the unconstitutional changes of government, in terms of the increasing threat of terrorism, has to do with the failure of the EU Sahel strategy. When the European Union decided to engage in the region and decided to kill two birds with one stone, as far as they were concerned, the two threats were irregular migration into Europe and terrorism. So let's deal with both. We will go in under the leadership of France, and we will try and address that threat by securitizing the Sahel region, restricting movement in a region that relies on seasonal migration. Seasonal migration is a matter of life and death. You don't move, you die during the dry season. So, and they got it wrong, and Nigeria was not involved. They had G5 Sahel, Operation Barkhane, and all of that. Conversely, when you look at what we've been able to achieve with the multinational joint task force, and if you go further back, you mentioned Liberia, you mentioned Sierra Leone, they were resettled during their conflict under the leadership of Nigeria, and Nigeria leading ECOMOG. So it succeeds. It's our terrain. It's our it's our region. We understand it better than others, and we are the largest country. It's just a matter of you know the realities. So with regards to the question my brother from Ghana on the African continental free trade area, I think you were referring to Nigeria's initial delay in signing on to the African continental free trade area. You see, again, Nigeria led the way. We have ambassadors here. It was one of their colleagues that championed the creation, the birthing of the African continental free trade area. The late great ambassador Chris Otakwe, he passed away. Unfortunately, you see, we also, these are some of the setbacks of living in a democracy, but it is still better to live in a democracy. So because of the deliberative nature of democracy, when you have interest groups within your country that say, no, let's take another look, to carry everybody along, or at least a majority along, you have to take another look. The president at the time was ready to fly to Kigali to sign the agreement, and certain interest groups, certain businesses in Nigeria said, no, let's have another look. We feel that there are certain clauses in the agreement that need to be looked at again. We looked at it, so we delayed, but you know, at the end of the day, we signed on to it, and Nigeria and Africa are the better for that. With regards to improvements to the UN beyond reforming the United Nations Security Council, of course, even before the UN Security Council, I think funding is the major challenge. It needs to be, we need to find a way to improve on the funding, to improve on peacekeeping, to also contribute to some of the efforts that the African Union and ECOWAS are making with regards to standby forces to fight terrorism. So that is one that I can think of off the top of my head. I'm sure there are many more.
We can do another round of questions. At the back, did you have your hand up?
Thank you, Your Excellency, for coming here tonight. I just have a question. We were talking about oil, but also I understand that Nigeria has an energy transition plan to be carbon neutral by 2060. What is your opinion on Nigeria leading in West Africa or the entire African continent as the
world transitions, and what do you think is, I know that, Nigeria is trying to electrify, update their power grid. Does Nigeria also want to help the other nations in the area also with their grid, or is that a good way of diplomacy or Nigeria's soft power to help electrify West Africa?
One more from over here. And then a last one.
Thank you very much. I would like to firstly thank His Excellency, the Minister, personally for myself and on behalf of many Sierra Leoneans like me, who due to the intervention in Sierra Leone due to the brutal civil war, I was able to make it alive and thriving now. So that is important. My question is, I am concerned as an African and as a citizen of Namibia and Southern Africa, 2 points. One, like my Ghanaian brother, I am also in the school of thought that Nigeria as a sleeping giant, once it's awake, the continent will know well and do well. So I am concerned that I've listened with very keen interest the presidential debate in the United States. And Africa was conspicuously absent from that debate. That brings a very serious concern in what is the US role in, what is their foreign policy towards Africa, and how is Nigeria positioning itself and the AU to engage the US? And within the continent, what is the role? There is not only tension between African states, but I look at Southern Africa and West Africa. We even see it within the beauty queens. Nigeria rightly taken theirs and now is representing Nigeria. How do we create that sense of unity within the continent to be able for Africa to take its rightful place in the global stage? Thank you.
We have one more from a student over there. Yeah, two more. Okay, two more.
Thank you, Your Excellency and Professor Jumo, for your time today. I also would like to thank you for taking special notice of Sudan and for our people suffering of our shared ancestry. I'm Sudanese. I wanted to ask you, you mentioned Nigeria is on track to be the third largest country in the world. What is the strategic move to turn size into influence in Africa and on the international stage?
Hi, my name is Williams, and thank you, His Excellency, and Dr. Jumo for appearing here today. I will immediately advocate for organizing more events like this, because this is like super insightful, and if you can have more things like this, it brings the people together and it fosters engagement. So I want to talk about development on foreign policies, and I will look at it from the route of Nigerians supplying for visas from Nigeria, because I came here last year and I'm a student of this university, and the process in which I went was very tedious. First of all, lack of appointment dates, which I can understand because of population and all that becomes a problem, but also the treatment of Nigerians at the Nigerian embassy by foreign diplomats and all that, the consulate and everything. It calls for attention. And I think last year there was like a staggering statistics of visa rejection from Nigerians in Nigeria trying to come abroad. So my question would be, in regards to these, what are the things being put in place? Because Dr. Jumo also explained about Nigerian perspective abroad and the image that we're trying to create. So what are the programs being put in place to, better and open more opportunities for Nigerians who know that they have the ability to travel out and make changes in different areas and use this experience, take this knowledge and go back home and create transformation and change? So what are these programs being put in place? And also, what do you think about the treatment of Nigerians who are traveling to, who are trying to travel abroad? Do you think everything is all right back home in terms of consulate, visa application process, appointment dates, and all that thing?
All right.
Okay.
Oh, one more, and then we have to. One more. Sorry, His Excellency.
No,
So, thank you so much, His Excellency. First of all, I want to appreciate you for whatever work it is that you did in making the visiting visa between Nigeria and US 5 years. My mom is able to visit often. But yeah, my question, I come from a generation where a lot of us have, we belong to the Japa syndrome. We left, Nigeria. We feel like there's a general sentiment that we've been hoodwinked and duped by Nigeria. There's a general decline in patriotism. Aside from our music, we really don't want anything to do with the country. And that's like most of the sentiments within the younger generation. We send money back to our parents, but we have no investments. We are not willing to invest back home because there's no safety regarding the investments that you put in. I, for one, I have a strong belief and a strong faith in Nigeria, but even convincing my friends to put together money to take back home is almost like a no-no. What are the plans that we can put in place? We assure people. I mean, even Dangote was struggling with the Nigerian government recently. So we that are trying to invest back home or trying to do things back home, what are the plans that are put in place to restore faith and some sort of patriotism from our generation in government?
Thank you very much.
thank you. So, beginning with the first question about energy transition and what Nigeria is doing to help other African countries. As far back as 1964, Nigeria built a dam, the Kainji Dam, and part of the arrangement back then was to supply electricity to Niger. So this is not something that is new to Nigeria. And then if you look at also the West Africa gas pipeline, which delivers Nigerian gas, which is used for electricity, for energy as a whole, to Ghana through Republic of Benin, through Togo, and that now serves Ghana to take gas the other way, because now Ghana is also a gas producer. Because for us, gas is also an integral part of our energy transition. We consider gas to be a cleaner fuel. Of course, it doesn't mean that we ignore renewable energy. It doesn't mean that we're not focusing on it. There's so much we're doing there. President Tinubu sponsored and assented the Electricity Act, which allows for feed-in tariffs. It allows for the first time for businesses to invest in power generation, in transmission, in distribution, independent of governments. And of course, also the subnationals, the state governments can do the same. And like you said, we are committed to our nationally determined contributions and continue to work on that. There's so many grid lines that are being sponsored, that are being supported by ECOWAS, by the African Union, and so forth, that are going to provide those linkages among African countries. With my brother from Sierra Leone, we talked about the US debate and the absence of any clear foreign policy agenda that includes Africa. It is something of concern to us. We're hoping that this is something that will change, hopefully before the election. And this is also in part why we are very very serious about the extension of AGOA. At least that is one platform for engaging with Africa. And AGOA would also provide a sort of division of labor within Africa, among African countries, so that they, because what you export, the finished product that you could export to the US through AGOA doesn't have to come from one country. We can specialize, and this, is why we have been working on the African Continental Free Trade Area, customs union, ultimately, monetary union, and so on and so forth, so that countries can specialize and they can contribute to such exports. And it's very important to have that platform to engage with the US, to have access to the US market, and vice versa, so that we continue to benefit from each other. There was a question about what we're going to do to take advantage of the size. I think I touched on it in part when I spoke about how we want to approach the issue of migration. Let's stop seeing it as a negative thing. Let's look at it as a positive thing. Our human resource for us is a blessing, it's not a curse. We just need to trace the right the amount of professionals that are needed. We need to, export skilled labor, but importantly for us, with dignity, with the respect that we deserve. That's very important. And of course, we're doing all of this also with one eye on leapfrogging, on technology, on digital technology. If you look at what Nigeria has achieved in terms of fintech, it's a leading country when it comes to fintech. In fact, in certain regards, we are actually ahead of some more developed countries because we started early. The government invested in a very dynamic infrastructure referred to as the Nigeria Interbank Settlement System, which allows for settlements in real time of transactions, and every bank in Nigeria subscribes to it. And it's owned collectively by all the banks in Nigeria and the Central Bank of Nigeria. That has, in part, driven that growth in fintech. So the jobs that will be created, of course, media and entertainment, Nollywood, the music, the world is dancing to Nigerian music. That's another growth area. If we look at the applications of AI itself has to be taught. So we're hoping that that teaching is going to be done by a sizable number of young Nigerians, which is why we're engaging with countries like India. That's why we have one of the Ds is demography, to make these sort of connections, to make the necessary agreements, create the legal framework to benefit from all of that. Business process outsourcing, all of that we're working on. So that's how we intend to achieve that. With the student visas, I wasn't sure if you were referring to Nigerian students applying for US visas and visas to other places to go and study. So if that is the case, it's something that we're very concerned about, and we continue to engage. A lot of these countries, we have binational commissions, joint commissions with them. And at every opportunity, we continue to emphasize this issue of admitting students and then having them get stuck because they've been admitted to, let's say, a university like NYU, but they can't get a visa. And some have even committed funds. What we keep telling them is, okay, you decide who you want to let into your country, as all countries surely do. But there should be better communication between the governments or the agencies that are responsible for issuing visas and universities or institutions of higher learning, so that you are not admitting more students than you are willing to give visas. So this is what we've been battling with. Sometimes with some success, some are improving. Of course, they always allude to the issue of capacity, that they're overwhelmed. But what I said to a country, a certain ambassador when he brought that, and that's not the US ambassador, I assure you, when he complained about the being overwhelmed, they don't have enough staff. I said, okay, why? Because they offered us that they would employ people to help us, so that they would be able to deport, identify Nigerians that they want to deport that are in their country by way of irregular migration. So I said, okay, we are prepared to pay for Nigerians to work in your embassy, increase your staff strength so that you can process more visas. Of course, he didn't find that funny. So, yeah. So, yeah, and you'll be surprised, even with my diplomatic passport, I go into certain countries, I'm leaving, I am about to board the flight. I noticed that when you're at the gate, the only people who have their passports checked are people that look like me, because automatically, even with a diplomatic passport, the mindset is, oh, is probably an irregular migrant, So these are things that we need to address, but the best way to address them is, of course, this issue of dignity, ensuring that we negotiate that. The JAPA syndrome, the fact that there is still apprehension with regards to taking advantage of opportunities back home. Of course, the Tinubu administration is addressing that. I talked about the Electricity Act. This is one way, one area of many. You have the infrastructure, the Renewed Hope Infrastructure Fund that can be accessed. You have a lot that is happening in the startup space. So you have actually a lot of foreigners that are investing in Nigerian startups, investing in agriculture, in different sectors. And they're doing that without any harm to their investment, because of course, a lot happens. And then the other way around, where you have a lot of Nigerians that are working remotely in Lithuania, in Canada, in so many places where you have software engineers that are benefiting from that. So that digital economy provides so many opportunities, which I'm sure you know that you can take advantage of. Thank you.
Thank you so much, His Excellency. We've had such a very engaging and interesting conversation. I want to thank every one of you for showing up and showing out. Let's give ourselves a round of applause. There are some refreshments at the back of the room. His Excellency will be with us for another 10 minutes with his delegates. So if you do have questions, if you just want to tell him how wonderful he is, this is the time. Thank you again, and have a wonderful day. We are honored that you graced us at NYU.